there was a big chunk of tohunga which came from Ngāti Tarāwhai all the way down to Tarāwhai. And Ngāti Tarāwhai had a son who was a tohunga, he had a son who was a tohunga, he had a son who was a tohunga. Ngāti Tarāwhai tangi hea tangi mōna kahukura nui tū hoto oriki rangi tauira tū kahua tū mahi tū mākua Tarāwhai. Those 10 men that I just recited were all, pūki tohunga i te wai a rātou mā. So you had that huge attribute there of tohunga ahurewa. And then underneath from Tarāwhai down to Te Rangi Takaroro, this is where we had the barbaric, savage warrior generations coming around. Te Rangi Takaroro was out the gate. He was, according to the kōrero, he was the undisputed champ of his time. He was a strategist, and it didn't matter what the landscape was, whether it was the open field, the dense bush, whether it was in the swamp, on the water, or even on the waka. He knew all the different strategies, and many people would come here, many hapu, they would come and ask Te Rangi Takaroro, we got a scrap against Ngāti Mea, can you come and help us? He said, just, yeah, sweet as, and he'd go and clean them all up. He was an uncouth barbaric warrior, Te Rangi Takaroro, and he had children who were all out the gate warriors. One in particular, his daughter Hineheru, she is a famous warrioress, and the kōrero is that she had her own opetau wahine, and what she was, 2 things she was well known for, actually 3 things, was her fighting prowess on the battlefield. She was tattooed from head all the way down to her toes. When she eventually died, they skinned her so that people couldn't find her bones, because grave robbing was very popular back in those days. And the other thing that she was very well known for was turning up to the battlefield with the heads of her previous chiefs that she had killed off in the battle before, had them on her hips to let them know, koutou mā, this is where you're going to end up, let's go. And so that was Hineheru. So there was a big chunk from the tohunga to the warriors, and then we come into the carvers, the waka builders. You've got Anaha Te Rahui's father, Te Rahui, who himself was a waka builder. He taught Anaha Te Rahui and his older brother Wiremu, how to carve. And then Anaha Te Rahui was like the Yoda. He was like the Yoda of carving. And there was Yoda, and there was Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, which was Tēnei Waitere, and also Neke Kapua. They were the 3 stooges, and they were like the top guns, where people from all around the country would come here and ask them to carve. Every time I'm out here, I think, what would it have looked like? Like I said before, there would have been waka all over the show. There would have been, our tupuna hunting, fishing, gathering, doing their garden. But of course, this has always been the main kind of inlet to get from Rotoiti through the track here, and then of course here to Tauranganui. They call this Tauranganui Bay. And this is also where Hongi Hika sent two of his warriors to come through and take him back the head of Tū Mākoha, Te Whanapipi, who was the very last tohunga of our whare wānanga Maninihau that stood here in Okataina. And they had heard about how amazing this tohunga was. And so Hongi Hika said, as they were pulling their waka through Hina Hopu and they came to Te Rotoiti, and he says, "You two, haere ki Okataina, whakahokia mai te upoko o Tū Mākoha te Whanapipi." So they came over here. So I'm not sure exactly where Tū Mākoha te Whanapipi was standing, but they came here, they dragged their waka, they started paddling, and they saw him. So they shot over to wherever that he was. When they got there, he was on the other side of the lake. They said, "Oh hell, what happened?" So they turned the waka around, they went that way. When they got here, he was at another side of the lake. There's a pretty big tohunga back in those days. And so the third time they turned around and tried to grab him. He did a karakia, which started, I kare haere te wai, and his goal was to capsize the waka and cause him to drown. But that's how back in those days, and that was only that was 1820. That's how powerful our tohunga were back in those days. And so they quickly came back to shore, caught back up to Hongi Hika and said, "Oh no, it was unsuccessful." And he says, "Well, you're lucky you're my 2 best warriors, otherwise I would have, cut your fellas' heads off." So anyway, they carried on to Mokoia, and they did that kaupapa over there. HQ was actually at Te Koutu, so that's where that was all palisaded. So the wahoroa that's displayed at Auckland Museum, that's Te Rangi Takaroro and his teina, Taporahi Taua. So they were the gateway, Rangi Takaroro at the top and his younger brother down the bottom, and it was situated on that side of Te Koutu. And there's illustrations of that and a lot of a few books around the show. But I think that's where a lot of big kaupapa, manuhiri were welcomed over there as well. There were a lot of kāinga that stood on Te Koutu and Tahuna Pō over here. Whether it was Tahuna Pō or Tahuna Pō, that was actually occupied by Ngāti Kahuupoko. So that comes into our Rākei, our Rongomai links on this side here.